Welcome to From the Red Couch, where local theater artists talk about the joys and challenges of creating theater in the Capital Region. We hope you enjoy the discussion and consider helping our friends at the Albany Barn. Your donations can help ensure that the barn will continue to be here for Creative License and the many other local artists they support. Click the link in the description to make your gift. Now, please enjoy From the Red Couch.
Hi, hello.
Hi, hello. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Lovely.
What is, can I jump in with the first question?
Yeah, go right ahead.
What is the most thrilling experience you've had as an audience member, and what is the most thrilling experience you've had as an actor?
Oh, okay. So this is actually, it's going to sound like I planned this, or that you planned this by asking me this question.
We did not talk about this beforehand.
We did not talk about this beforehand,
No.
but my most thrilling experience as an audience member was watching mine at Creative License. The play itself is like haunting and kind of creepy, and I find oftentimes that like we see a lot of things that are dramatic, or we see things that are comedies or something in the middle, but like I don't often get to see like a play, like a theatrical play, where it's like, this is creepy. Like I'm scared right now, and I'm not sure what reality is, and like I'm not sure, you know, we have this willing suspension of disbelief, but where am I supposed to be putting it? Like
Right.
the whole time I was just on my toes, and aside from the fact that the performers were stunning, and like I just, it was one of those shows that left me thinking about it for weeks and weeks on end afterwards, and I always think that that's such a good marker of like a great performance, a great production overall. Like so that was incredible. And then as an actor, again, Creative License, when I did Turn of the Screw, and Turn of the Screw is, funnily enough, another one of those plays that's really creepy. And but it was also, I would say, thrilling as an actor because it was so hard. I'd never had to use a British dialect before, so I had to learn that. There were limited time restraints in terms of rehearsal time, and it's just two actors really in this entire play, and it's prose. It's really like the play is written so close to the way the short story is written, and so as an actor to memorize that, like I have a hard time memorizing something that I can't immediately connect in my brain. Okay, this is why I'm talking about this next thing.
Sure.
And so memorizing it was really hard because I wasn't giving myself enough time to invest in her meaning of things. And so a lot of that made that really, really hard. But I think it was like one of the most fruitful performances I've ever been able to be a part of because overall the production was really, really incredible, thankfully. And
Beautiful,
like
yeah.
it was so different from any character that I've ever been called to the task to take on. And so by the end of it, I was like Kim Kardashian crying at tech, like, I'm not capable of this.
I don't want it to end.
I cannot do this.
Yeah.
And I did, and that was like pretty thrilling.
Yeah.
So what was as an audience member the most thrilling show, and then as an actor?
Well, it's funny that you kind of listed off things that you had as part of your most thrilling performance as an actor.
Yeah.
You'd kind of listed off all these things that you had done for the first time or weren't as familiar with Creative License, and I feel like that has kind of permeated all of my Creative License experiences. The fact that I've been able to like check off a lot of, this is the first time I've done this, this is the first time I've done this. Especially in a time where it feels like a lot of theater is so repetitive. A lot of people are just sort of banking on the same things and using the same tropes and the same visuals and the same, everything kind of repeats itself. And so I feel like with the projects that I've done with Creative License, I've been able to tick off a lot of boxes of feeling like, I haven't done this before. Let's throw myself in. I haven't done this either. Oh, now I'm up to 3 things in this one show that I haven't done before. Is this right for me? Should I be doing it? Yeah, let's do it. So I feel like as a performer, I think the most thrilling was finally feeling like I had some kind of grasp in performing from White Plains from like start to finish.
Yeah.
Just because it had felt segmented to me for a while,
Yep.
and to feel like it coming together as one piece was really gratifying and was really satisfying to kind of feel that journey, that arc go through.
Yep.
And it was one of those performances where I was like, I haven't really done any theater about social issues. I hadn't done any theater that meant anything to me real personally before.
Yeah.
So it was ticking a lot of boxes for me in that respect.
Yeah.
In terms of an audience member, and it probably wasn't all that spectacular, but it was kind of the push that got me into theater when I was a kid. So I was in Troy seeing Young Actors Guild do The King and I remember because my next door neighbor at the time was in the children's chorus or whatever, and obviously this was not an appropriate cast for The King and I. And so it obviously stuck out with me that I needed to get into the program and started it the next summer. So I started up at that same group when I was 9, ready to go, just like ready for theater. So I feel like even though I can't remember the specifics and the details and the costumes and the lights and how it made me feel,
Right.
it feels to me very poignant and thrilling because of what it kind of stands for in my trajectory with theater.
I love that. So we're not volleying the same question back and forth. I'm going to double ask now.
Yeah.
I want to go back to From White Plains for a second, because that was one of the most incredible things that I've seen you in. But honestly, you were the most consistent actor that I know. And it's like weird for me to say that because you're also one of my best friends. So, but like you were one of the most consistently just strong presence on stage. And in From White Plains, it was hard for me to watch as someone who like knows you intimately and has gone through and seen you go through, you know, what that story is about, right? How, as an actor, do you like prepare yourself for diving into a character like that, but also maintaining that self-care and the disconnect of like, this is Nick and this is the character?
It was kind of about time limits for me. I found that line strange when I was trying to memorize lines, trying to like look at the script in my own time when I was kind of in my own space and my own environment.
Yeah.
So mixing those two things didn't work for me. So it was more like really like staying with the really rigid time restraints. It's funny because you always hear about like actors on film sets having to stay the character, having to stay in that place, be in that place. That never worked for me.
Yeah.
And I specifically remember every time I came out of that show after finishing From White Plains, I was so smiley and warm and huggy and so like grateful and thankful, and I'm never that way after a show. I want to hide, I want to leave out the backstage door and pretend it never existed. And that was the one show where I felt like I wanted to come see people and engage, and because I had given myself that 55 minutes to be in that place. And at the end of it, I was ready to say, that's done, and I need to wash it out. And I think that was important, and I didn't really notice it until that first performance week. I didn't realize that was the tool I was using. Especially because, like I said, it was that first time I was involved in something that meant something to me personally.
And I know it's the world we live in, and you didn't make it. But it's because of your voice that I believe it. And it's because of your voice that Mitchell believed it. What you did day after 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 day, not someone else, what you did. And I remember everything. Everything. And it's not because I'm holding on to it, it's because it is holding on to me, and it's not holding on to you. And that's not fair.
Yep.
And I know you've been getting involved now in things that are really personal to you.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible feeling, but it has a toll. I mean, it takes an emotional toll.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can't help but make those associations. That's one of the things where it's like you just have to kind of come up with tricks. Do you feel like you have a trick, or do you do anything specific, or do you kind of let that bleed sometimes?
I feel like it's a mixture of all of those things, right? So, I mean, you know, oftentimes, especially in the world that we live in socially today, this is becoming more of a conversation, especially, you know, with like Broadway Black, and the Broadway community in general is having a lot more dialogues around how race is showing up and manifesting in the theater, and how racism is manifesting in the theater, right? And it's not new, it's just something that we're actually engaging in a conversation about. So oftentimes I've played a lot of tokenized characters who are, you know, the one Black person who shows up in the play. And oftentimes in plays that are meaningful, that token character, their entire character is about their race, right? So sometimes it's hard to not, you know, step away and say, okay, but that's not you. Like, that's not your experience right now. Like, you can let that go. But then sometimes it's like, but that is my experience, and that's the reason I can play this so well, is because I am not just hurt for this character, I'm hurt for myself. I've been hurt by the people that I'm on the stage with sometimes, like, so there definitely are times where it's harder for me to shake off, and especially in that aspect, it's been hard to come back to reality when I am like the one Black face and my entire character was about my Blackness, right? It's definitely been easier. For example, so, you know, in terms of Screw, I play a character who, depending on your perspective, is either going insane and is in the midst of her breakdown, or is being terrorized by actual spirits, right? And either way, it's emotionally taxing, and it's emotionally taxing to do that. There's no intermission, and you're doing it with one other actor, and it does get like really scary and creepy, and like, am I the one who's crazy right now, right? But it was so much easier because that character was just a woman, and not necessarily, she had nothing to do with what my race was, right? And I am a Black woman who played that character, and that can add sorts of depth and color to, you know, the story.
I kiss the pictures and place the locket round my neck, and I turn it. What I see before me is a woman in all black, standing in an island alone. We stare at each other until I realize it is me. There's a full-length mirror in the corner of the room. My father's house had no mirrors, and I've never seen the whole of me before.
So even though I spent the entire show terrorized, I was able to come out and greet people and joke and smile. Like, the second I took the or not even the second I like stepped back and got to see Aaron, I'm like, yes, we fucking did this. And then like came back and was like ready to go. As opposed to a show like Eclipsed that I did with Black Upstate Theater Troupe, where that entire show is about Black women and what Black women went through in Liberia during the Liberian War, and the connections that I made while studying and doing my book work to how Black women are treated in this country, and how, like, socially Black women are treated, and how Black women, the different dynamics that we have with white people, but then also within our own community, and then that, you know, we're not just talking about race now, we're talking about patriarchal structures and how that's impacting things. And these are women who are being raped and kidnapped from their families and forced to pretend to be wives. And I played one who was finding joy in her situation, you know, is kind of the comic relief of this like really grim play. And still, you know, she even has to face like everything, the weight of all of this towards the end of it. And I just remember one night getting into my car and I couldn't start the car because I couldn't drive, because I couldn't see, because I like was like I am this character right now, and you need to take a minute and come back to Angelique, because if you don't come back, I don't know that you're going to be okay to be able to perform this again.
Right.
So it definitely, it comes in ebbs and flows. Sometimes I'm able to like shake it off, and sometimes it's like way too close to home, and I haven't built enough of, I guess, the boundaries yet to figure out like how to always enact some, because not the same tactic works every time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it really depends. It's almost like this other person that you have to protect yourself from.
Yeah.
And once you figure out the keys to kind of developing that skin between the two of you, then you can kind of keep on doing the work and keep on, doing your business and what needs to get done. But until you kind of recognize what needs to be done, it's a strange emotional line.
It is, and it's weird because it's like, which part of the character is triggering you? Like, which one got to you this time?
Right.
And so figuring that out always helps, figuring out what's going to build that wall between you and the character.
That's true.
For sure.
Do you have a specific playwright that you attach to, or do you have a part or a role? Is there, I know for me it changes. So is there one like currently that you're really obsessed with? Or?
It's definitely like a current thing, because it definitely changes all the time. But I am so attached to, first of all, Katori Hall is such a phenomenal playwright. Like all of her plays are just like, I want to like have a Katori Hall playhouse and just do all of her work.
Just do it in rep.
She's incredible.
I love it.
It's just so wonderful. And it's so lovely to like speak words that actually came from a Black woman, because I find oftentimes when I am performing Black women characters written by white men, I'm like, I change the lines a lot, because I'm like, sir, that is not how we would say it.
Let me fix this.
hold on.
Yeah.
I'm going to make this authentic for you. Life. I feel like for Black women, like, the figure of like who you should be or who you should be aspiring to be in terms of heroes are like Coretta Scott King and like a Michelle Obama. And like in a world where like everyone is aspiring to be those women, and they're incredible women, they're amazing, I'm so much more of a Cammie, because she's so imperfect and so flawed and so aware of her flaws, right? She's
accepting of them.
She's super accepting of them, and she's not necessarily saying like they're okay. She's saying, I am a flawed person. I have hated, I curse, I've cheated, I have robbed people, I failed, like I've done all of these things, and yet God still deems me worthy to not only like have this other side experience, but like worthy enough to come help you, Dr. King, like one of the most incredible people in the world. Yeah. And so I find Cammie, like I find a relation to her so much, because I feel oftentimes that I'm more powerful than I give myself credit for, but I'm also like, I am not a Michelle Obama. I'm definitely a flawed, very, very imperfect person.
Sure. It's funny because I've always, it makes sense, but I've always found your performances to be most revelatory when you're speaking the words of a Black woman. Not just necessarily as the character, but the playwright who is a Black woman. To me, I feel like your connection, you're always connected to your material, but I find your performances to be even more grounded, even stronger, even more just fully invested, fully involved when they're speaking the words of a Black woman. And I just think that's so interesting too, because my director eye goes, I want to see you as Stella, I want to see you as, all these different types of characters. But I think you've sort of found what that, you found where your connection is in terms of material, and what you find is the best in terms of accessibility for you.
Yeah, and I feel like right now I'm in a place like as just a human who, like an adult woman, right, who is like super connected to my Blackness, and I feel the most comfortable there. Yeah. And I think I spent such a long time unintentionally apologizing for being Black, right? For being an other.
Sure.
And I think right now I'm kind of reveling in the fact that people are uncomfortable with having to talk about it all the time. My goal as an actor has always been to bring to life people's experiences who otherwise would not have been heard
Mm.
or talked about.
Sure.
And I was given the body I was given, and so like I represent like this community, and so I want to be like speaking the words of people who come from my community.
Absolutely.
What character like really like changed you in terms of like just like grounded you into like a performance and made you like kind of restructure the way you attacked like book work and things like that?
That's a difficult one. I think I've gone through phases of how I approach sort of characters and laying that foundation of script work and being really involved in all of that. There was a performance that I did in college of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, and I was Hamlet in their sort of their little play that is going on when they're sort of like the sidekick that comes off out of the play. And so I remember that being the first time that a director took me aside and said, this is you know, the vision I have for this. This is the vision I have for the play, but this is the vision I have for your character specifically. And he wanted me to really delve into like the words, and it was kind of the first time for me to use an educational academic eye, which I love, to kind of like put analysis into theater. So that was really refreshing, and that was something I hadn't done before. And even though there's really not much to do or say, it was something that I hadn't experienced before. It felt like I was learning something new. It felt very new and interesting.
This like, okay, so I know we're talking actor stuff, right? But like creative license does like a lot of like revolutionary, like kind of different shows, things that people haven't necessarily seen or exposed themselves to before.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like wondering like if a theater, maybe even creative license, like called you up like today and was like, and you know, the world was different. And was like, we want you to direct, like what would you pick? Because you also are super interested in, like you have such a director's eye, even when you are approaching like your own book work and scene work for a character. And I'm just interested, like what would be the show that you would first want to direct here?
It would be a classic. It would be something. I've always thought about different versions of some Shakespearean plays. I've always thought about some different versions of kind of ancient Greek stuff and making it less academic and more, not necessarily in our language, in contemporary language, but infusing it with contemporary visuals and storylines that maybe like you see making sense in today's world, but you hear it, that kind of juxtaposition of hearing ancient language, but seeing contemporary visuals.
Yeah.
I definitely like the ideas of love and power and how how love and relationships are reflected in terms of who has the power and when and why and what they do to exert that influence over the other person or over a group of people. Or I think that dynamic is really interesting. A lot of ancient plays deal with that just based on their casting needs or having to appeal to a huge arena of people. They needed really lofty themes. So I think it might be interesting to find something with a lofty theme. I tend to have like random directory ideas and then they just kind of keep going. It's like a constant movement. Do you feel like a design director? Do you feel a bend in that direction?
I mean, I don't know, right? I don't know. We're at such a weird age right now. Like, it's so, it's hard because I'm constantly back and forth between like, I'm interested and I see things that maybe not everybody, like I'm starting to realize not every actor even like sees when they see a production or takes into account in terms of like a bigger picture.
Right.
But then at the same time, I had this conversation with my boss like a couple weeks ago, just like, when did you make the decision to stop being an actor and start being a facilitator for that, right? And his answer to me was like, I don't know that I ever did.
Hmm.
But yeah, I definitely like think about it. I think about the directing aspect a lot. And I think it would have to be something that like I'm like super like emotionally attached to for like my first go round.
Absolutely.
What is a character that you have like really wanted to play and haven't been able to play yet?
Oh, well, I was very happy that I was able to be in Dorian Gray, first of all, because I'd read that book at Shaker Junior High
Yes,
School.
you did. I remember.
And I had been obsessed with that book for a long time, and I highlighted. This was back in the days of highlighters.
What is
real
that,
books,
honey?
in real books of paper.
Honey, stop aging us.
And I highlighted so much that essentially the whole novel was highlighted. I should have just highlighted the version, the sentences that I didn't give a shit about. So I still have that copy somewhere. So that was definitely like, that was a goal. That was a goal that I needed to hit. So I was very glad about that.
Still life, Harry mocks. Harry sees an orange. I see its skin. I see its texture. I see the bruise from where it fell. I see the tree from which it fell. I see the seed from which the tree grew. I see the sun that feeds the seed. I see the sun's light. I try to capture that light. I tried the same with Dorian while he sat for me. I wanted to reveal his essential truth. But at his core, my friend remains a mystery.
I think I've always wanted to play one of the conflicted gentlemen in Tennessee Williams plays.
Oh, yeah.
Any of them.
Yeah.
Because there's just, he himself was so conflicted, and I feel like he wrote so much of that bitterness and that all of those swirling emotions into some really great men in his plays. So I think that would be really interesting to play one of those, kind of one of those conventional Tennessee Williams roles. There's always some great Shakespeares that I would love to jump into, only because I think people look at me and assume comedy, and they think that's good. I can fit into this comedy box, but I've always loved branching out into drama. That's one of the things Creative License has been wonderful at giving me the chance to do. Because not a lot of places like to take a risk on people who are really good at what they do, but wanting to try something different. And so it was really refreshing to be able to say, yes, I do a lot of comedy and I feel like I'm proficient in it, but if you think I can do something this dramatic and this meaty and this substantial, I welcome the challenge and I hope I can make it happen. Where do you feel most comfortable? Do you feel most comfortable in a dramedy, in a comedy, where are you at? What feels good to you?
I don't know. I feel like I'm figuring that out still.
Yeah.
I feel like similarly to what you're saying. It's interesting. Creative License, I agree with you in the sense, I've only been able to do one production with Creative License, but even so, it felt very like, this is not a character that any other theater house or director or company would have come to Angelique Powell for.
A housekeeper who lied to the magistrate in a court case. That wouldn't go down well for you now, would it, Mrs. Gross?
I told you that in confidence.
Yes. Surprise!
And so thank you. Like, I'm so honored that you are willing to work with me and stretch me in that way, right? And I find oftentimes that in other theater homes, I'm often there for a purpose. And my purpose is to probably be like a strong Black woman who is there to make you cry and then go away.
Do a monologue, cry, and then go home.
Yep. So like for a long time I thought that's That's where I'm most comfortable, right? But it's not necessarily where I was most comfortable. It was just something I'm good at and capable of doing and most familiar with. I find so much joy in being in a dramatic, like tragic show, but being the joy in the show. Like, you know, being the laugh, like being able to get a laugh out of an audience that was just crying is like the most rewarding and refreshing thing ever. And to find some of that joy yourself, because I think life is so dark, and especially right now, there's nothing but time to think about how dark things are. And being able to find like, what brings you joy today, Angelique? Like, and so I really love the idea of like being in these shows that are super important and deal with really important issues, but then also being able to be the light, because I think that's a symbol of like what I'm trying to do by being an actor, is just like, I don't necessarily know that I'm always joyful, but I do know that I always want to be a source of joy for other people. So I think that's that. Where do you feel the most comfortable?
I think I just have to be invested in the work.
Yeah.
I think once I'm invested in the work, I'm invested in the material, in the play, in the people around me, in the people watching. I think once that full community is formed, that whole emotional basis is formed, that's where it's changed styles. You know, it changes plays, it changes vibes and feels and communities and theaters. So I think that's where I feel the best, is when that sense of togetherness and all being on the same page because of whatever theatrical experience we're giving, that's where I feel the best.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that I know personally I've been given that opportunity to do that here with Creative License. And I know that you've been able to be in several roles with Creative License and be able to do that. And it's just been such an honor. And I'm glad that they had us here today. And I'm so glad I got to see you.
It was wonderful.
Have a good day.